Croatia advance. Your thoughts?
How are my thoughts? How does Croatia advance? I mean, we could sit here and we could give the Croatian team all the credit they deserve.
But you're not going to do that. You're going to say Brazil choked.
Brazil definitely choked.
Okay.
But let me give Croatia credit. Juranovic down the right-hand side, all game, open lane. It was Livakovic, save after save. It was Luka Modric in the center of the midfield, and I'm sitting there asking myself while watching him play how he can still run that way at 37 years old. Like, it is insane to me to see him do what he does at that level and at that speed. He's not just a guy who gets on the ball and tries to make things happen. He's a two-way player. Petkovic, even before the goal, hit a flash of brilliance in the first overtime where he goes between two defenders, two Brazilian defenders. I'm like, how did he get out of that? Squares the ball, ball goes over. You saw flashes, you saw signs. But the real tale of this tape, the real story here is how wasteful Brazil was in front of the net.
Yeah.
I mean, just extremely wasteful. I could see Neymar not being a factor all game until he was, right? He really wasn't a factor. On the ball, didn't create too much. Off the ball was kind of just there as an extra man. Oftentimes you're asking yourself why TJ still maintained him in the game. And then he scores a goal. That's why he's there.
Right.
Because when Marquinhos had one. Because when Militao down the right-hand side whipped one in and it was almost an own goal. Because of when it's Rodrigo or Vinny Jr. or when it's Richarlison trying to get on something. They were just wasteful in front of the net. The real story here, if you look at it, was the opportunity lost to the Brazilian team. And then when you take it to penalty kicks, and here's the big thing. We just came off this Argentina versus Netherlands PK shootout, penalty shootout. Who was the first one to take it for Argentina?
Messi. Rolled it right down the middle.
Messi.
Cool as a cucumber.
Messi.
Yeah.
What number did when did Neymar take his penalty kick?
I must have missed it.
You must have missed it?
Yes.
Why?
Still
Your
waiting in
best
the wings.
has to take it first. Always. Sure. Seguro. It wasn't the case.
Let's lock back in on the game for a second because I want to really bear down on kind of why you think Brazil choked. There's a couple things in extra time that I can point to. DJ, who's, by the way, is out now. He's gone.
Yeah, but he always maintained that it was a two-cycle deal for him when he was done.
Okay. He said, I don't agree we were disorganized after the match, specifically talking about the last counterattack. Now, it's 1-0 in extra time, and if you watch how that breaks down, there's 6-7 Brazilian players in the attacking half with minutes left in extra time. Croatia has the counter, and they're in the odd man rush. There's like 3 or 4 Brazilians back. That seems irresponsible to me given the moment of the game. Am I being too harsh there?
Absolutely not. And it's Luka Modric that spins out of that starts that play. And you're thinking to yourself, like, why is he allowed to spin out of that? And it's funny because we're sitting there and we're watching what was the Argentina game, and Juan Carlos Osorio, el profe Juan Carlos Osorio, comes back and he starts talking to me about that play. He's like, do you notice who was on him? Who let him go?
Casemiro
was sitting on a yellow, right? That would have been one to take him out. He would not have been available for the semifinal. That play continues. Luka Modric sets it up. It's a deflected goal. I understand that. But it forces it into penalty kicks, and you're second best in the penalty kicks over a team that, if you look at their group play, very physical, very hard 0-0 draw against Morocco. Did their business against Canada.
Yeah.
Back to a very physical 0-0 draw against Belgium.
Kind of lucky against Belgium, right? If Lukaku has an even decent finishing day, they win that game.
If Lukaku opens his eyes, because I think it hit him without him realizing.
Right.
He had one very clear chance. It could be a different story. Against Japan, a very physical Japan team. And I'm talking physical in the way they press, physical in the way they challenge, physical in the way they make things demanding for you. Luka Modric ended up playing 97 minutes of that game. They go 120-something minutes. Penalty kicks against a Brazil team that had the luxury of resting 9 players versus Cameroon.
Yeah.
Had the luxury of routing South Korea, and minute 63 starts subbing in some of the reserve players, subbing out some of their stars. And yet the fresher team, at least in the first 45, was Croatia. Second half, a different story. The tide had turned. Possession, chances, play, volume, all in Brazil's favor until you score and you let down that one moment. Because you're right. There was no need, especially with this. TJ is very pragmatic.
Let me ask you about
So
that.
I'm surprised that happened.
Was he too pragmatic, because I go back to the USA-Iran game. You were critical of Greg Berhalter kind of making the defensive substitutions, which kind of invite the opponent forward. What I would tell you in that Iran game, the same thing I would tell you here. When the opponent has to score.
Iran, yes.
Yeah, what did I say?
I thought you meant Netherlands. I'm sorry.
No. In the Iran game, right? Yeah. So when the opponent has to score, they're gonna throw bodies forward. I think it's okay to defend. But right after the goal at 1:05, he makes 2 subs which are defensive. One, he brings on Alex Santos, right?
Yep.
But then Fred. I mean, Fred. If there's a defensive player for Brazil, it's Fred. Should Chiche in that moment have been more assertive, more aggressive, and said, my team can get a second and end this game, or were those the adequate calls?
No, I mean, if you look at it, everything was fine until that point. It's one play that breaks down for him.
Okay,
I mean,
so that's on the guys on the field then.
Of course it is. It's on Casemiro. It's on whoever's in the midfield. Fred, you can't let Luka Modric spin you. Get out of that play and start that play. Start that sequence. When that happens, I don't care who the coach is. You know, it's the final minutes of the game. You cannot allow a breakdown of that magnitude.
You mentioned Brazil being wasteful. 21 shots in this game, 11 of them on goal. Livakovic, depending where you look, credited with either 10 or 11 saves on ESPN.com. They're giving him 11.
He had at least 3 legit goal-saving saves.
I want to ask you about body language, because you talked about Croatia looking fresher in the first half. Did they look fresher, or did Brazil just not look like they had enough urgency? Because I didn't see a Brazil team that looked like it was a knockout round game. It looked like Brazil more in the group phase. And then as far as body language is concerned, and it was just one guy's face, but it's the guy for Brazil. After 120 minutes wraps up, you get the shot of Neymar's face walking off the field. He was not confident. It was the face of like, oh, God, this is not what we want to be against
your
this
hands.
team.
It's a toss-up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really...
But you're Brazil, you got to be confident.
When you go into penalty kicks, it's emotional, psychological. And who had the psychological blow at that moment in overtime? It was Croatia. Because once Brazil scores, Croatia doesn't fold.
Yeah.
They throw numbers. They keep coming at you, and then they get their goal.
Yeah.
That was the psychological blow. That's really what hurt Brazil in this game. And once you go into penalty kicks, it's out of your hands if you're a talented player like Neymar.
Sure, especially if you don't take a penalty. And I want to get to that in just a second. But bigger picture with Brazil. If we go back to, when you or I were kind of teenagers in our early 20s, Brazil were dominant. 3 straight World Cups where they make a final. They win 2 of those. Since then, 5 World Cups, 4 eliminations in the quarterfinals, only 1 trip to the semifinals. Is there a common thread in any of those? Is there something that for you is missing from Brazilian football since they were at the very, very top?
What could be missing from Brazilian football? Because they export
the talent is overwhelming. Like every one of these World Cups, they come in as a favorite on paper or close to it.
Every year they could have a Ballon d'Or nominee.
So what's happening?
It just goes to show you how difficult it is to win a World Cup. It really goes to show you. There's a reason only 8 countries have won a World Cup, and it's the same countries that win a World Cup. There's a reason that South American countries have not won a World Cup since, 2006?
No, 2002.
2002.
Yeah, the last time Brazil won it.
Last time Brazil won it.
Yeah.
Look at how much Argentina just struggled.
Yeah.
There's a reason for this. There's a reason the best football in the world is played in Europe. What can you ask Brazil more of? Think about this.
Yeah.
Exporting.
Right, like when you talk about other countries, you can say, well,
Playing
you're not
at the
doing this,
highest
you're not
levels.
doing that. Yeah, with Brazil, it's a head-scratcher.
Especially this Brazil, #1 ranked team in the world.
But it's not like they're not even getting to semis, right? It's like you're going out in the quarterfinals, which
I repeat,
is...
it goes to show you how difficult it is to win a World Cup.